Hello,
Hi.
and welcome back to another episode of Breakroom Banter.
It's a hairstylist adjacent podcast where each week,
Two
who
friends
also happen to be hairstylists,
break down our weeks in the break room. I'm your host, Hunter Walden,
and I am your co-host, Ericka the Red.
and today I can't even believe that we have this
I
person on the
know.
podcast, to be honest with you. I followed you forever. But we have a person on today who helps salon owners understand their business costs
She offers coaching on charging properly and evaluating business strategies.
and also knowing your own worth. She has a free expense profit calculator on her website, nina-tulio.squarespace.com.
And she has also written a book called The Fearless Hairstylist.
She also offers a multitude of classes, such as her Synergy course, virtual education, one-on-one coaching.
And also one called Make That Money course, which I like that name.
I'm totally into
and as well as strategic budgeting classes with Oligo Pro.
that. And today, in the break room with us is Nina Tulio.
Yay!
Hello, guys. Oh my God, you guys are so freaking cute with your opening. I can't even take it. I'm here for it. I'm going to have to tell Jay, look, we're going to have to step up our game.
Is. So, Nina, we introduced you, but that is just kind of, I feel like, skimming the surface on who you are. So, for people that may not know you, tell us, who is Nina Tulio?
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, so listen, I've been around the block. I've been in this business for 26 years and I've served in different facets of this industry. So I was a hairstylist for 20 years, a commission salon owner for 11 years, and also worked as, I worked as I guess I would say as a partner. I was a partner in a group of hair salons in West Palm Beach, Florida. I was a district manager of 8 salons with 55 employees before I even owned a salon. And so I've been in this game for a long time. I absolutely love this industry, but more so, I just love helping other people grow. I just love watching other people reach their goals and dreams and kind of cheering for them. So I'm just so, I wake up every day and I'm like, how awesome is this that I get to wake up and love what I do every single day with amazing, super spectacular people. So that's the long and the short.
Yeah.
So, Nina, you inspire a lot of people, but who would you say is one of your biggest inspirations?
Oh my goodness. Biggest inspiration, I have been truly blessed with two amazing mentors that have been with me since I was 19 years old. So I would say, Ray is no longer with us, but Robin, who hired me into her company at 19 years old, she plays a big role in my life, but also just where I am in my business. They really kind of took me under their wing, and that was who I worked with when I was the district manager of salons. So I started with her as a hairstylist, then was a manager, and then was a district manager. And I just learned so much from them on the business side, on the leadership side. And even though, I don't see her on a regular basis, of course, because we live in different ends of the country, there are things that pop up in my mind about her, I would say weekly, things that she said, things that Ray said, things that we've done together, and things that they really taught me about leading people and giving back and all of those things. So I would say Robin for sure. And of course, my mom, I think, my mom is just one of those people that is just incredibly strong. She's been through a lot. She's been through a lot in her life, but she just is one of those people that just keeps trucking, keeps fighting, keeps moving through. And I do gain a lot of strength and have a lot of admiration for my mom as well. So those would be the 3.
I love that you said that, because that's always, every time someone asks me, like, why do you do hair? I'm like, because I want to make my mom proud, because my mom's a hairdresser. So
oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, and I was like, I want to be like my mom. So I love that you said that she was one of your biggest inspirations.
Yes.
I honestly don't think that I knew you had so many different facets in your career. I knew about the salon owner and being a stylist for over 25 years. But like I said, we just did skimming the surface. But do you feel like along the way throughout all of those things, there was a decision that you made that ultimately resulted in where you are today? There we go.
Yeah. So I knew when I worked with Ray and Robin, we were partners when I ended up like separating and kind of like breaking ties with them. And I was with them for probably 8 to 9 years at that time. And I just felt like I needed to do my own thing. I needed to spread my own wings. And we were in Southern Florida at the time. So I ended up moving back to Pennsylvania, where I'm from originally, and started my own salon. And, you know, when I started my salon working behind the chair, because there were a few years that I wasn't working behind the chair when I was a district manager there for a while, because I ran those 8 locations. That was my gig. And I'll never forget Ray saying to me, you know, your strength isn't working behind the chair. Your strength is leading and coaching other people. And, the longer you're behind the chair, the longer you're going to defer that kind of the growth I think that you're looking for in helping develop other people. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. So when I started my salon, I knew that I wasn't going to be a hairstylist forever. I knew that I wasn't going to be a salon owner forever. And when I decided, I thought that it would be like a 5-year plan, but shit never works out the way that you really want it to. You kind of have to trust the process. And so it was probably I'm going to say maybe 2013, 2014, finally, when I decided that I was going to actually put the business, kind of like really think about selling the salon, because it was at its highest profit ever. It was doing incredibly well in terms of sales. And we were looking to leave Pennsylvania. My husband was looking for another job. So I would say I started to kind of write coaching programs at that time, probably in 2013, maybe 2014. And that was when I really knew that things were going to shift for me, because I knew that, okay, once I sell this business, I'm not going to be Nina, the salon owner anymore, Nina, the hairstylist anymore, which was a very great loss for me. When I sold the business, it was something that I wanted to do, and it was a 2-year plan and process, and it worked out the way that I had wanted it to. But there was still a loss in, seeing my team every day, which I absolutely love. And I see them and text them and talk to them, quite frequently, even now to this day. There was a loss in seeing the clients and the energy. You guys know, like, you're in the salon, like that loss of the energy and serving people and seeing their face light up when after you're spending time with them an hour or two doing their hair. It was a little bit of a loss for me, and I kind of felt like I lost my identity. So I went through a little bit of a shift after that, but I would say the pivotal moment was probably 2013, 2014, when I started writing some coaching programs that I knew that things would really kind of change for me.
Okay. I have actually a couple questions stemming from that. Mm-hmm. But so did you say when you moved to Pennsylvania, you immediately moved from Florida, where you had lived for several years, if I'm understanding that correctly?
So I'm from Pennsylvania originally.
And opened a salon after not living there for several years.
So so I'm originally from Pennsylvania. Yeah, moved to Florida for a year. So I was only in Florida for a year, and then, but we opened 5 salons in 1 year. So I was booked and busy.
I guess that's why my time was like, how, that's incredible that you were able to move away for so long and then
to just
open your own salon immediately after not, being there.
I mean, you kind of have it right a little bit, because when I left Pennsylvania and moved to Florida, I wasn't doing hair at the time. So I hadn't done hair for quite a few years. When I moved back to Pennsylvania to start my salon, I had no clients. I didn't really, I was in touch with people, of course, in the industry, but I wasn't like coming from a salon where I was working with people and I'm like, hey, I'm opening a salon. I was a little bit separated from that. So, yeah, and it was really tough. The first year of my business, and I've talked about this openly, but the first year of my business, I almost closed. And then actually the fourth year I almost closed. So I almost really closed my business twice within the first 5 years of opening. So it was a it was a shit show. Let's just keep it real. It was a shit show. First 5 years, total shit show.
Wow. This is not one of our questions, but just based off of what you just said, if you knew then, or if you knew, then what you know now, would there have been things you did differently? Or is that just the reality of opening a business, is that you're going to have those moments regardless of how great your business plan is?
I love this question. I think, I mean, I know so much more now, right? Because I'm coaching with and working with people, and our industry has evolved and changed so much. Business education has become the forefront of our industry. It was always in the background for so long. So yeah, I would absolutely do things differently for sure. But there also is a learning curve. Even when you're working with someone, whether you're working with a coach or you've been in the game for a long time, you're always going to continue to learn as an owner, as an independent artist. I mean, it's just the nature of the business, and it's just the nature of being an entrepreneur. So it'd be great to know everything when you open, but unfortunately that's not how it happens. So I would do a lot of things differently, but I also know that even now, if I'd get back into it, I still would be learning,
You would still have those moments of like, oh my gosh, am I going to close down next month?
Yeah.
Or I'm sure, because it's just overwhelming to build that. A lot of people don't realize that the business structure and everything that you coach, that is just as equally as important as the culture that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And they go hand in hand. I'm going to kind of jump off of our questions, but I feel like this perfectly segues into the topic of what we know to be true about the industry is that it changes so much, right? And so quickly. With your social media, you are constantly coaching on preparing for the future, right? So my question to you is, what does the future of your coaching look like without working in a salon, staying on top of the salon happenings, I guess, is a good way to say that. Like the things that are changing daily, how are you planning for your future to stay on top of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have your pulse on the industry. And by that, I mean, not only with other coaches and with other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, but also with hairstylists who are in it, who are in the trenches, who are doing hair every day, and independent artists. And, I work with both independents and commissioned salon owners. So I think having that connection and having clients that I'm also learning too. Like I'm learning what's changing. I'm seeing what's changing. And I know that things are definitely not what they were 5 years ago. So I think making sure that I always have at least one arm in with hairstylists, with independents, and with commission owners, and asking questions like, okay, what's going on? What are people asking for? And me asking questions. Stylists, what are you looking for? What are you asking for? Owners, what are you seeing in your business? What are the biggest changes that you're seeing? What are your biggest challenges? I think it's always asking questions. And so, yeah, things have to change from my end too. And even and I talked about this on our own podcast, but from the way that I worked and the way that I ran my business back in, 2009, 2010, 2011, especially during the recession, it was a lot different. I worked around the clock. I took one full week off in 11 years, and I say, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't burn yourself out that way. That's just the way that I worked. But I was also, trying to fill a void, in my life. I was also trying to, fill in pockets of pain that I really didn't want to deal with. So working for me and being in my business was part of that distraction. So yeah, things are always going to change and evolve, but my role is to make sure that I'm I'm communicating with people who are in it, that they are working it, they are living it, they are feeling it, and that I understand that, things are going to continue to evolve, and I have to be a part of that. I can't just kind of sit back and say, okay, well, let's just continue to do things the way that I did them. Because I'm always learning from every coaching client that I have. I'm always learning from them too, because they're living the day to day of running a salon and seeing hairstylists and interviewing them and seeing what their needs are.
Mhm.
I like that because I mean, I know we as hairdressers sometimes we can like if you're not in the trenches with us, we're like you don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
That is important and it's refreshing to hear that that's like in the forefront of your mind and part of your business since you aren't behind the chair day to day
Mm-hmm.
anymore, that you're making that a priority because I mean, Hunter and I were talking about it. It's kind of the difference between getting like a brand rep to give you a class versus like a
Mm-hmm.
hairstylist who you the product line in the
Sure.
salon every day. So
Absolutely.
it's really cool and it's great and I'm glad that everybody listening to this knows that because it's important, to
Yeah.
us.
And I
And I
think
feel like
collaborations are important.
yeah, totally.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like
So
that's a big one for me, is like collabing with people. Like I have to make, like I want to work with other people, and I bring other coaches into my programs, and like I love to share, because I'm also learning, as I'm going too, and seeing how things are evolving and changing. But part of being a leader is seeing things that are coming. My mentors would always say, leaders see the furthest into the horizon. So part of that for me is looking ahead and seeing, okay, this is kind of the way that things are going to be going, and making sure that I'm staying on top of it in my coaching style.
hmm And I guess another question I have from that is, it's definitely a skill that you have to be able to look into the future and kind of see and predict things. But so, what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have that innate ability to look 5 years into the future? Where
Well, I think
maybe just so overwhelming for them that looking into the future is out of the question.
I think that that's one of the things that we have to change. I shared a post on Instagram not too long ago that, if you want to take your business to the next level and you want to elevate, you have to stop living in the day to day and start looking further into the future. And it's not like, I have this crystal ball and I'm like, ooh, all of these things are going to happen and I can see that. I am pretty in tune and intuitive with that kind of stuff. But if you're not, just part of being a leader is to step away from the day to day and say, what does my business look like in the next 3 to 5 years? What do I look like when it comes to my leadership style and the way that I am coaching my team in the next 3 to 5 years? What does my brand vision and mission look like in the next 3 to 5 years? So it isn't necessarily pulling out the crystal ball and saying, okay, I hope this is where we're going to be. No, it's setting up a strategy to say, this is where we are now, but this is really where I see us going. And it's going to take us a good 3 to 5 years to get there. And people who get stuck, and listen, I got stuck in the day to day too. And that's why my first 5 years of my owning a business was a shit show. I was stuck in the day to day, and I was stuck in the mundane and the worrying of, where's the money going to come? How am I going to do this? And I wasn't strategizing. I wasn't thinking further ahead. And it was until that I really started to hold myself accountable and take a step back and say, no, my team is relying on me to give them the next 2 to 3 years. What does that look like? Because if they're going to be with me for the next 2 to 3 years, they want to know where they're going. So it's really stepping up and taking accountability as a leader and looking further ahead and creating a strategy and a plan of action and not getting stuck in that day to day. That's part of just being a leader.
Yeah.
would you say that those leadership skills are something that anyone could learn, or like you had said in the beginning that your mentors told you relatively early on that you were meant that you were a leader, like a natural born leader or whatever. So would you say that somebody who may not have been quote unquote born with those skills, is that something that can be learned, or do you feel like maybe there's just certain people that aren't meant for that?
I think, yes, there are leadership skills that can be learned for sure. And I think it takes time to develop. But there is also a sense of working on self and a sense of building confidence within your own person first that has to come along with that, because it's very hard being a leader. It's very hard making tough decisions. It's very hard knowing that what you're going to do isn't going to make everyone happy, especially in a business where we people please all the time. So you have to have that sense of brand, sense of self, sense of value, and sense of direction in order to make those hard decisions. And I think that's where we struggle a little bit in this business, is that we tend to make a lot of leadership decisions based on emotion and not based on what's best for the business long term. Because a lot of us aren't looking long term, and I was guilty of that too. So it can be learned, absolutely, and it can take time to develop. You have to really make the commitment to do that, but you also have to do self-work. You have to put the work within yourself, because if you're not confident within who you are, you're not going to be confident making decisions for your brand and your business that are going to be good for the business long term. Does that make sense?
No, definitely.
I like what you said there about like making emotional decisions versus making decisions for your business. And I feel like this industry is notorious for emotional decisions.
Yeah.
Like emotional discounting, or like, oh, I feel like she needs this conditioning treatment today because she's had a really rough go of it lately, and
Her
I'm just
boyfriend
going to give
dumped her.
it to her.
Yeah.
And this $30 today is not anything. But if there's one thing I've learned from Nina Tulio, $30 today is $10,000 in a year.
Yes.
You know it. Yes. I love it. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like what other industry is making decisions based on emotions of their guests or the customers or their patrons, their investors?
Well, I actually have a question from that then too. So, because I love your videos about that kind of stuff, because it's so small, and I think about it sometimes even more when I'm like, you spent $10 on lunch today, and like just dumb things that I'm like, I didn't really need that, and then you think, oh, and I gave out 2 free conditioning treatments today. So like, where would you say, or is there a fine line between adding value and like how do I want to
I feel where you're going.
Do you know what I'm
with
saying?
this.
Like so let's say you've got, I don't know, like you want to do it for retention, or you want to do it for just making this person feel good, so that
marketing
dollars, yeah, I guess. When would you say an instance, like, is that acceptable 5% of the time, or would you say never ever do it? Would you say, like, what kind of advice would you have on a situation like that? Can you word that better, Hunter? Or
I think I understand. I got you. I think I got it. I do, because I think what happens is that when you're making long-term decisions based on emotion, that's when we get in trouble, right? When you're not thinking about pricing long-term, then you start discounting and doing all the things behind the chair that affects your financial future long-term. And I know that when you're making business decisions, it's best to take the emotion out of it. However, there is a very human element to our business. And when you feel, and this is how I ran my business, and I believe part of the success of my business was because of the way that I led from a space of compassion and love, was that I'm a human that really wants to help other humans. So if I knew that Judy came into my salon, which I did have a Judy, and this is true, she did have a headache one day when she came in, and she was not feeling good at all. And she was one of my longtime clients, really, really good client. And I ended up putting peppermint oil on her palm and giving her a little bit of massage on her palm and giving her a little bit of a longer scalp massage for her treatment. I'm not thinking like, oh shit, I'm losing money on this because I'm giving this away. I'm thinking there's another human in my chair that I love and care about, and I'm going to take care of them because that's just the right thing to do. So it's different when you have moments of that, because we are in a human to human business, than if it is the epitome of the way you're running your business. If you feel uneasy and you feel insecure in the way you're running your business, so everything becomes a discount and everything becomes a free treatment, then that's a different story, right? So I can't really put a number on that because I just think that we really have to be human. And we really have to understand sometimes that people are hurting. And you know what? If a 5-minute freaking express treatment is going to make them feel better for the day, then I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to think about the $15, $20, or $25 that it's going to cost.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So I have found recently that it is so hard as a traveling educator to educate ourselves. So my question to you was, when and what was the last class you attended?
Ooh, oh my goodness. So I do a lot of virtual classes, and I do a lot of I do classes that don't have anything to do with our industry. So I'm on masterclass. So I'm always taking classes on my masterclass app, which I love. I just started to do a course, like a storytelling course, when it comes to writing captions and creating content that's like scroll worth, like the people stop scrolling. And you know, in person, probably what I did Tony Robbins 3 days. That was a few years ago. I also did an actual realtors course, which was actually a leadership course, but it was for realtors, and it was open to anyone. And so myself and one of my friends, who was also a hairstylist, we went and spent time there, actually all day there. And Kobe Bryant was actually one of the keynote speakers, so we did get to see him speak. And it was that was amazing, you know, but I do a lot of virtual, like I feel like in my body where I'm like, I'm not feeling good. Like I'm not feeling sharp. I need to take a class. You know, I love Simon Sinek. I read a lot of his stuff. I listen to his TED Talks. If you are looking for someone who isn't a servant style leader, like I feel like I also am in a servant style leader, Simon Sinek is it. I love the way he speaks. I love his positioning on leadership and caring for other humans. And I like doing a lot of his stuff too. But I went to, I'm trying to think because I feel like I was at a class and I can't remember when it was, but I love to do hair shows and things like that, and do like little pop-ins. And, you know, obviously now, since we're moving beyond, hopefully, the COVID situation, I wasn't doing anything in person for a few years. I was kind of like laying low on that spectrum, but yeah, now it's back and kicking. But I do a lot of virtual stuff, and everything is outside of the industry. You know, it is a lot of leadership driven and coaching style stuff that I kind of dive into.
I think that it's important that, we branch out and challenge our brains in a different way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I wrote all of those things that you just said down. I'm like,
most of it.
I use Masterclass, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like I pay for the membership annually, and then I kind of forget that it's there. So I'm going to go on there and look up these people that you've been talking
if you
about.
have an account, then I'm going to look in there. Because I've been thinking about getting one, but I just wanted to see inside first.
I love that. Do you want to go to number 9?
Boom. Yeah. Okay. So, do you feel like there is a magic formula or a guide to follow if you are someone who is wanting to phase out of being behind the chair and more in a leadership role, like either as a salon owner or with a brand or something like that?
You know, I get this a lot, and I live this myself, because I stopped working behind the chair a year before I sold my business, and I was working 6 days a week, and then went, to 5 days, 4 days, 3, and then I think 2, and then I wasn't behind the chair anymore. So I actually have a lot of people who reach out for coaching for this, because it can be very, very overwhelming. And, first you have to want to know why you're doing it. Like, what is the reasoning behind why you want to stop working, or maybe working less behind the chair? Because your role as the leader is always to make sure that whatever you're doing is to grow and build the business and to grow and build the team. So if you're wasting time doing things that are not doing either of those, you're just wasting time, period, right? So I think it's knowing why, and then also setting a plan of action in place that could take a year or two. You know, if you're working 4 days behind the chair, you know, and you want to cut back a day or two, I suggest doing 1 day, you know, giving your clients ample notice, and ample notice could be 3 months. It could be 5 months, whatever feels good for you, but you have to position yourself in a way that your team can absorb those clients, you know? So it has to be well thought out, and it has to be done in a way where the client is thought of, and also the stylists that are working with you are being thought of and are being matched up with clients. And so I recommend doing it 1 day at a time. So like you do 1 day, you kind of let that sit for a little bit, you know, maybe for 6 months or a year, and then you maybe do another day. If your salon is capable and you have a stylist that can absorb your client base, maybe you want to back away 2 days. If you have, the other thing you have to think about is your profit, because your profit margin is going to diminish, because the money that you were taking in as a stylist now is going to be shared with the stylist that you're paying. You know, you have to pay them. So that money isn't necessarily going to you. And then however you disperse that, whether putting it back into the business or compensating yourself, that now is going to be split. So my profit margin took a good hit when I stopped working behind the chair, but I planned for that and I knew that it was coming. So there are other aspects you have to look at, but I suggest doing it in a way where it's slow and it's thought out and it isn't rushed, and that it's being communicated with all parties, meaning the stylist and the clients, and that you feel good financially to make sure that you can absorb the hit, and then positioning yourself and putting your time into growing this business in a way that you have never done before. Because when I stopped working behind the chair, I was showing up every day. I was still coming in on Saturdays, even though I wasn't taking clients. I was going out, and I was part of the women's business council for the chamber, and I was VP of their programs, and I was showing up and I was getting clients to come into the salon. That was now my role. Even though I wasn't taking them, I was still wanting to build my business. So you have to ramp up your marketing strategy and the way that you're spending your time, and making sure that that's going to be going back into the business so you can offset that profit that may be lost. So that would be my kind of like my step guide to that.
I like how you said that. I actually have had a not great experience working in a salon that the owner decided to step away. We've talked about it on the podcast several times before. It was when I got sued. And so my what I would be wondering is, like, how are you coaching owners to do that and not take on the role of a dictator versus a leader? Because do you know what I mean? I feel like whenever a stylist is not behind the chair anymore and they're owning the salon, sometimes, not every time, sometimes they get that big head on their shoulders and it turns into a micromanaging situation. I guess the answer for me would be just don't be a micromanager. But
right. Well, I think it comes down to what we were talking about earlier with, like, when you're not a stylist anymore, hairstylists are kind of like,
right.
And then you're over this group of people. And so, yeah, in some cases it can happen. So how do you coach your clients
on not to do that?
On not going there. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think what you have to understand again is that when you're a leader, you're getting people to buy into your bigger vision. If you don't have a bigger vision, what are they buying into? This is a bigger picture problem here. This isn't and it could be more of an insecurity thing, because a lot of times when we're insecure, our ego gets louder. And so we have to understand that the ego isn't running the business. The confidence in the leadership side is running the business, and that you have to continue to align yourself and be accessible and also relatable. So one of the things that I think that you guys mentioned before, and I want to touch on this, is that, because I'm not a hairstylist anymore and I don't have a salon anymore, does that maybe make it a little bit difficult, or how do I keep my pulse on things? But I think what makes me relatable is that I was a salon owner for 11 years. I was a hairstylist for 20 years. So you can never take that away from anyone, right? So I understand on a much deeper level, all of the things that go into running a business, and also all of the things that go into being a hairstylist. That never goes away. Some of the systems may change, the structure may change, the overall running of a salon may change in areas, but that experience never changes. And you can't relate. I'm sorry, but no one can relate to being a salon owner or a hairstylist unless you were one. You can do amazing things and you can grow businesses and you can help all of the people. There are people who can do that and it's amazing. But there is a relatability factor there that comes from someone who has experience in working as an owner and as a hairstylist for a long span of time. So I think when it comes to that, if we're talking about a salon owner that's been in the game for a while and now isn't doing hair anymore, that doesn't make them any less of a hairstylist. It just means that their role has changed. I think where we run into problems is ego drives that. If they're running the business from a space of ego and not care, compassion, and love and leadership, and also not communicating this with the team. You've got to be transparent. You have to be upfront. When shit goes well in your business, you communicate it. And when shit isn't going well, you communicate it. I think there's a part of being transparent that is a really good characteristic of being a good leader. So I think there's a lot of facets that go into it. But, if you were not, if you were leading from ego before, you're probably going to lead from ego again, whether you're behind the chair or not. It also has to come from within. There may be some things that have to be worked on within. And sometimes the insecurity of not being a hairstylist anymore comes into play. And then that ego starts to get louder and louder. And then that's where you become more of a boss and not a leader. So you got to work on both ends, both personally and professionally.
That's interesting to hear, because I've never owned a salon, but I've worked for a lot of owners. And some were hairdressers, some weren't. And there was different levels of involvement from all of them.
Sure.
The ones that were hairstylists at one point, they were tended to be more relatable. But then again, I never had really thought about it from the angle of the salon owner having an ego or insecurity issue so much, as it was it just seemed as
these people are mean.
Yeah, they're jerks, but not they could be feeling
insecure,
which I'm usually pretty good at, putting myself in other people's shoes. So maybe I'm the jerk here for not picking up on it. But I like to hear that you coach that, and that you would tell someone, hey, you're being, you're being insecure. That's what that is. That's not easy to hear. So it's interesting.
And that's part of it. Yeah, that's a big part of it. For sure. I think it's a lot of tone. I've worked with owners in particular where just the tone is off. They have good intention and they have good sense of leadership, but, saying to someone, you need to do this. And I'm like, and I've coached this before where, you need to do this. It sounds more of a boss than it does a leader. And a leader would say, hey, when you have a second, would you mind helping me with that? I would really appreciate it. There's a difference there. And so I think sometimes it's just tone, where you're just so used to kind of talking to people in a certain way, but understanding that you have to understand how you would feel if you were being talked to that way. You have to put yourself in other people's shoes as well. And yeah, are there some people who are just jerks? Yeah, that happens. But I believe in our industry that I believe that people are, when they're hurting other people, because hurt people, but also insecurity is a big driver in the way that salons are being led at times. And that turns into overcompensation and ego, which can come off as being mean. But it really is that they're scared and they're hurting inside and they don't know what to do. So they feel like being louder and being more aggressive is the approach. And it's actually the latter. When you want to convey and you want to have people to buy into your brand and message, you don't have to be aggressive or loud. You just have to show up and do what you say you're going to do and be consistent in every step of the way and work like as a human to human level. Like people matter, you know? I think that's more of the servant side to me, is that people really matter. And you have to understand that we're dealing with other humans that are going through some shit. And so part of being that leader role and being an owner is to understand that other people come first, you know, and that's just part of the gig. Unfortunately, now I'm not saying to owners, don't take care of yourself. I'm not saying don't feed your soul. I'm not saying don't take time for yourself, because you have to come first in order to fill them. But in the business, you know, when it comes to, you know, I joke about this, but like in the back room, but when we had food in the back room, my team ate first, you know, I ate last. And that's just kind of the mentality that you have to have. I wanted them to shine. I wanted them to be on the pedestal. I wanted them to be on the forefront. I'll lead from the back. I don't need that, you know? And so I think it's a mindset shift, but it's also understanding that there has to be a sense of confidence in what you're offering to be able to lead from that space too. And you have to feel good within self. That's why it's dual. You know, you have to work on self and you have to work on your leadership skills too.
Would you say that that's what sets you apart from other coaches that are coaching salon business right now?
You know, there are amazing coaches out there, and I work and collab with a lot of them because I love them and respect them. I think that there is a person for every coach. You know, I think you have to find your person and the person that fits your vibe and your energy. In terms of what sets me apart, I mean, I think it's just being me. Like, I'm just real and I am who I am all the time. There's no show, there's no agenda, there's no I don't know how to be anybody other than myself. And I think my experience being in the business for so long really helps with that. But I also know who I am, and I know what I offer, and I know what kind of person I am. And I really am grounded and rooted in that. And that's why I can show up the way that I show up for my coaching clients, for you, for, you know, my audience on Instagram, is because I've done a lot of work on myself. You know, I've done a lot of healing, and I continue to do so. I'm still a work in progress, of course, but I think that's really just the difference. Is either, you know, you're going to get what you get and I'm going to tell it how it is, and that's your vibe and you like that, or, you know, and I'm not for people too, and that's okay. And that's why we have other amazing coaches that can, you know, I can refer people to, you know, if they don't feel that I'm their vibe.
Absolutely.
I dig it. Are we ready for number 11?
I guess so, yeah.
Alrighty.
I always ask that one, and then you ask the
Okay, go
other
for
one.
it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I want you to take a look back at your career, the whole one, the whole thing. And what was the first moment that you remember feeling proud of yourself?
Whew. Wow. It's a long time to think back for all of those years. You know, I feel like it's 26 years of things, you know. The first time, you know, I really struggled with this for a lot of years. You know, I talk a lot about swapping out the word worth for value, especially when it comes to pricing services. You know, I no longer say charge your worth. It is charge your value. And I think a lot of us struggle with mixing personal worth with our value behind the chair and how we're running businesses. And I did the same for a very, very long time because I was very insecure. I was an insecure owner. I was an insecure and scared stylist for, you know, I'd say the first few years of being a business owner. And so the first time I'd feel proud, I mean, there are a lot of things that go through my mind, but I would say, man. One of the biggest ones was moving through the debt that I carried and the mistakes that I made that almost cost me my salon. Having to sell my salon to keep my business, and then moving into a bigger space while I was in the recession and while I was $90,000 in debt, and coming out on the other side in a positive way. That probably is one of my proudest moments, only because it was one of my hardest. Ooh, I'm getting emotional. like I still sit in that a little bit, even though I feel like I've worked on all of this stuff and I continue to work on myself, but disappointing my team at that time was like really just the worst. I hated that because I just always wanted to do right by them. And it was my fault. I made bad choices when it came to finances, and that's because of my own money story and how I was raised, with being taught about money. But it just was a really, really hard time. But I feel like I would not change it. I would go through it again. And I think, being transparent with them and letting them know that I was going through some shit and that, I made some mistakes and we're going to be okay. And, they knew I sold my home to keep my business because they came first. And that's a big ass example of them coming first. Me selling my home to keep my business because it was my responsibility to do right by them. They trusted me. So the proud moment came when I was like, okay, we're not doing well in the space that we're in. We're 600 square feet. We need a bigger space. Getting into a much higher rent, getting into a space that needed to be rehabbed, and doing that, borrowing $5,000 from my best guy friend and hiring a new stylist and getting my face out there, taking accountability for my own shit and turning my business around. We grew 20 to 30% year over year after that until I sold my business. And that, I would say, is probably one of the proudest moments because it was the absolute worst. It was the worst moment for me. And so I think coming out on that, I was like, okay, listen, like I've been through some things, I've been through some things growing up. I've been through some things. And if I can get through this, I go ahead, like test me because I am here. I've been at the bottom many times. So I'm ready. You know what I mean? And also having the support of my team there with me, them still trusting me to stay with me through all of that and continuing to grow. That I keep that with me. That was very special. That was a very special time for me, for sure.
You built a culture of people that not only loved and respected you, but they trusted you. Mm-hmm. And they knew that if you said you had it, you got it, and you did have it. And that's so special that you did it. Mm-hmm. Like I got emotional listening to that, and I'm not an emotional person, but yeah, that's amazing. Go ahead, take it away with
so the next question is usually what was one of the biggest opportunities for growth in your career? Because we don't like to say failures, but I almost feel like you just answered that. So I'm going to make an executive decision here and ask a different question. And that would be, what advice would you give younger Nina?
Oh boy. I would give.
End with tears over here.
I see that. My goodness. But you are right with that. During the recession, in terms of that was the biggest moment because living through that and coming out through the recession on the other side, that was definitely a moment that was like a turnaround, for us, for myself and my team. I would tell my younger self I would tell her that you are so much stronger than you think. You're so much stronger than you think. And also to listen to your gut because I am pretty in tune with things. And a lot of times I didn't listen to that, and it ended up getting me into situations that were really not the best. So you are so much stronger than you think, and make sure that you always listen to your gut. That's what I would say to my little person.
I'm writing that down because I do that a lot. I'm like, I think this is right. No, it's not. I don't believe in myself.
A lot of us do that, and I still do that today. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. Get your shit together. Listen to yourself.
A moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have sufficiently written more notes on this podcast than I have on any podcast that we've filmed ever. Nina, thank you so much for spending your time with us. I know that time is very valuable, and I appreciate that a whole hour of your day was talking to us.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for opening this up. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Well, until next time, if you'd like to follow us on our social media journeys, I am at Herrick's Hunter on all the things. Our podcast is at Breakroom Banter Pod on all the things.
And I am Ericka the Redhead on all the things.
And Miss Nina, would you like to share your links and handles and all the things?
Yeah, so you guys know I live on Instagram, so you could find me on Instagram at Nina Tulio. And please feel free to slide into my DMs. I do answer every single one of them. I do want to make sure that you know that you are supported. And feel free to check out my website, ninatulio.com. I do have a ton of resources like you mentioned in the beginning. And just feel free to hop on and check out all of the things and push yourself a little bit, maybe outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. And once you follow her, you will never not see that pretty pink blazer
Right?
dancing
I know.
dancing across your screen, honey, every day. I love it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
You're so
you.
awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. And until next time,
Bye.
bye.